While all the headlines were talking about the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team having been the fastest in the 2025 Formula One preseason test, with that 1 minute and 33.6 seconds that set off alarms in the paddock, there was a team that did not want to win the timetable. It wanted to win something much more important. And that team was Scuderia Ferrari. Because while Mercedes was looking for media impact, Ferrari was executing a completely different plan. A silent plan. Calculated. Coldly strategic. Accumulating thousands of kilometers with the same engine. Testing an aggressive turbo concept. Validating active aerodynamics that borders on the regulatory limit. And above all, hiding its true performance. The question is clear. Did Ferrari let Mercedes shine on purpose? Because what has been revealed in the last few hours does not speak of a lack of speed. It speaks of a structural advantage. Superior energy management. Stability in long runs. From a car that does not need to force to be within tenths of the best time. And that is much more dangerous than a fast time on low gas. Today we are going to analyze what Ferrari really did while everyone was looking at Mercedes. Why several teams were shocked. The preseason at the Bahrain International Circuit was not just another test session. It was the first Real board where teams began to show, or hide, their cards for 2025. And what happened there completely divided the paddock into two opposing philosophies, that of immediate impact, and that of silently building a structural advantage. While the stopwatch placed the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team at the top with a lap that captured all the headlines, inside the Scuderia Ferrari box the atmosphere was radically different. There was no celebration for the best weather. There were no extreme low-load classification drills. What there was method, discipline, and a roadmap that went far beyond those 3 days. Ferrari made a strategic decision that few teams dare to execute with such clarity. Maximizing kilometers with a single test powertrain. Don't look for the peak, find the base. Instead of squeezing the engine to show muscle, they subjected it to an endurance program that touched 4,500 kilometers. This is not just reliability. This is structural validation. It means that they are confident in their thermal architecture, their hybrid management, and their consumption efficiency under real loads. Here's the detail that began to worry rival engineers. The new compact turbo concept discussed in the file. A smaller turbo implies less inertia, more immediate response, and better adaptation to the 50-50 electric split that will dominate the 2026 regulations. This translates into something key on the track. More linear curve exit, less clipping, and a more progressive power delivery. On a circuit like Bahrain, full of traction and violent accelerations, that not only matters, it defines races. Meanwhile, Mercedes worked in shorter runs, looking for that psychological blow that has always characterized Brackley. The best time is no coincidence. It's a statement. But Ferrari did not respond. He did not counterattack with a devastating time. He chose silence. And that's where the real impact on the rest of the teams begins. Because when a big team doesn't show everything in testing, the paddock is divided into two interpretations. Either they don't have rhythm, or they are hiding something big. And the long runs of Hamilton and Leclerc, consistently running within a few tenths of the best time without the need to optimize soft rubber or minimum fuel, began to tip the balance towards the second option. Additionally, the SF26 was internally described as the most stable car in long simulations. Docile at curve entry, predictable in degradation, tire temperature controlled, and that in Bahrain with more than 40 degrees on the asphalt is not a minor detail. It is a technical signal. While McLaren F1 team showed confidence in race sessions and Oracle Red Bull Racing dealt with reliability issues that disrupted its program, Ferrari was accumulating critical information on energy consumption, braking recovery, and aerodynamic balance in real race conditions. And here's the crux of Act 1. Ferrari didn't race against the clock. He competed against the future. The revelation of what they were really doing didn't just surprise the press. It directly impacted rival technical departments. Because if the red package is already stable, efficient, and consistent without having shown its peak performance, then the ceiling could still be hidden. Mercedes won the headline in Bahrain. Ferrari could have gained something much more dangerous. The peace of mind of knowing that its technical foundation is solid. And when the foundation is solid, development during the season becomes a devastating weapon. Because it's one thing to do kilometers. And quite another is that, days later, technical details begin to leak that completely change the reading of the tests. When Maranello let it be known that they had worked with a single powertrain for practically the entire program and that their focus was not on finding the best time, but on validating the energy behavior under real race conditions, the reaction in the other garages was immediate. especially in the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team, because Mercedes knew something. If Ferrari had been running with higher loads, conservative hybrid maps, and without optimizing the classification, then that difference of a few tenths in the table could be completely artificial. Here comes the most delicate element of this whole matter: energy management. The new compact turbo concept being talked about not only improves acceleration response. What is truly critical is how it interacts with the hybrid system under the 50-50 scheme that is looming for 2026. Ferrari would have advanced structural work that others are still exploring. And that changes the development equation. It caused doubts. It prompted internal reviews on other teams. It prompted deeper data comparisons. And above all, it caused an uncomfortable feeling that perhaps the true favorite has not yet shown his ceiling. Mercedes won the stopwatch battle. Ferrari could have won the development war. And now the big question begins to take shape. Was Bahrain a statistical mirage? Or the first serious warning that Ferrari has learned from its 2024 mistakes and is coming with a much more mature technical base? If you want, in Act 3 we enter the political and regulatory dimension of this movement, where the active aero and the margins of the 2026 regulation begin to play an even more delicate role. Because what has really made several teams nervous is not just the performance of Scuderia Ferrari. It's where they're finding it. The file reveals something much deeper than a simple good pre-season. Ferrari would have worked on an aggressive active aerodynamics concept, exploiting gray margins of the current regulations while already orienting its architecture to the 2026 cycle. And this is where Act 3 shifts gears. Because the 2026 regulation is not a simple evolution. It is an energetic reset. 50% combustion, 50% electric that forces us to completely rethink the interaction between turbo, MGUH, which disappears, thermal management and energy recovery. And according to what is said, Ferrari is not reacting to the change, it is anticipating it. While other teams including Mercedes-AMG still seem to be fine-tuning the balance of their current packages, Ferrari would be building a foundation that already fits the future logic. That is very dangerous. Because when a large team aligns present and future at the same time, its development stops being reactive and becomes exponential. Now, the most uncomfortable point for the paddock is the active aero. There is talk of mobile wings capable of providing up to 8 km/h extra on a straight line under certain conditions. Not as an isolated trick. Not as a visible controversial piece. But as an intelligent integration within the permitted margins. Subtle enough to be legal. Effective enough to make a difference. And this generates two immediate consequences. First, the teams begin to review onboard cameras, compare telemetry and peak speed sector by sector. When there is suspicion of too clean efficiency, the analysis becomes obsessive. Second, political pressure begins. Because if Ferrari has found a valid regulatory window, other teams have two options: copy or pressure the FIA to close the gap. And this is where Ferrari's strategic silence makes even more sense. They didn't show the best time. They didn't attract attention with a simulated pole position. They did not provoke an immediate reaction. But they left enough clues for the paddock to know that something different is going on. Meanwhile, Oracle Red Bull Racing is going through an internal phase of technical and structural adjustments. McLaren F1 team remains strong, but its 2025 concept is an aggressive evolution of the previous one, not a structural reinterpretation of the energy future. Ferrari, on the other hand, seems to have done something more risky, combining current stability with regulatory projection. And that changes the whole reading of Bahrain. Because then the tests were no longer a battle of tenths. They were a war of vision. Mercedes was the fastest, but Ferrari might have sent the most powerful message. We are prepared for what is coming. And when a historic team transmits preparation, calm and hidden edge at the same time, the psychological impact is enormous. Now the great unknown is inevitable. Will we see the SF20 SIXS true potential in the first race? Or will Ferrari continue to manage its lead until it's too late for the rest to react? The Bahrain tests were not a simple comparison of times. They were not an early leaderboard. They were a silent declaration of intent. Yes, Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team was the fastest by one lap. Yes, the media impact was his. And in a Formula One where the narrative weighs, that counts. But while the focus was on the stopwatch, Scuderia Ferrari was building something much more difficult to measure. A solid, stable technical base aligned with the regulatory future. Ferrari did not need to lead the table to send a message. It was enough for him to show consistency. It was enough for him to accumulate kilometers without failures. It was enough for him to ride at tenths of a second without pushing the car. Because when a big team doesn't show everything, and is still close, the real fear is born in the other pits. What really shocked the paddock was neither an illegal piece nor an obvious innovation. It was the philosophy. While some were looking for the immediate hit, Ferrari seemed to be playing the long game. Optimized energy management. Turbo adapted to the 50-50 split that will dominate 2026. Aero activates by exploiting regulatory margins. And, above all, a stability that in long runs can mark championships. The question is no longer who was faster in Bahrain. The question is who understood the timing of the technical cycle better, that if the SF26 is already competitive without having shown its ceiling, the scope for development during the season could be devastating. And if they have truly aligned 2025 with 2026 logic before anyone else, then the blow is not circumstantial. It is structural. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.